Speaking up here, Police Minister Bheki Cele has called on police officers to prioritise gender-based violence cases over the holidays. Nearly 43,000 calls from victims of gender-based violence were logged during the 2020 festive season period. Now, during this time last year, the Tears Foundation took thousands of calls from women who wanted help. Let's speak now to founder and herself a survivor of gender-based violence, Mara Glennie, who's with us tonight on News at Prime. Mara, very good evening to you on this Christmas evening. Welcome to News at Prime. So we've been reporting tonight on a story in Limpopo where a man allegedly shot 7 relatives, among them 4 children and a pregnant woman, apparently in what had been a disagreement about who had the right to stay at his late father's house. How common are these sort of family mass attacks during this time of year?
Good evening. Yes, it is a very, very big problem. Imagine this, we all go into the Christmas season with expectations, most of them unrealistic, that this is going to be a magical time and your dreams are going to come true. And now you're stuck in a venue with family you like or don't like. Tempers are rising. People are getting on your nerves and someone just loses it. So it doesn't make it justifiable, but it most certainly makes it understandable. It doesn't just happen in South Africa. It happens around the world. Holidays are the time for increased violence against families.
And just on that, I mean, I cited some of the stats from 2020, I beg your pardon, the end of year where there were thousands of calls which you took yourselves with your foundation. When you look at the situation this year, are you seeing less of a need for assistance or more?
I think we're seeing more of a need, but we are seeing that the problem is being addressed on lesser basis. One of the things that I find quite difficult to handle is that most facilities are shut during this time. I personally, because as you correctly said in your intro, I am a survivor, and I understand the desperate need for help when you're in that bad situation. So we don't shut over Christmas, but many places do. So not only have you got organizations such as ours that shut their doors to counseling over Christmas, but you have overloaded police stations and we have poor service in the police stations. And so we have basically a lack of care for gender-based violence victims and for difficulties in the household across the board in our country.
And when people do call you, what are they usually dealing with most? What kind of abuse are they usually being subjected to? Is it what we all think, that people mainly call when it's physical violence?
Actually, I found last year, if we base it on the stats from last year, that many of the calls, at least 50% at a guess, would be from people who have been locked in with an abuser or even their past memories, and that the situation has triggered memories of their abuse and created fear. So they're remembering what happened to them in their marriage or when they were a child or whatever. So it's very, very difficult. There are many things that is not just physical abuse. In fact, quite rarely physical abuse, mostly emotional and financial abuse.
What about alcohol? Oh, it's been an issue in the past. Is it still?
I'm afraid, yes. I'm afraid alcohol does play quite a large role because whilst alcohol can never cause you to abuse, it just takes that sharpness off your wits, and it might cause you to hit someone you wouldn't normally hit or make you filled with anger that's caused by the alcohol. So alcohol does sadly increase abuse.
Mm-hmm. Just on an earlier point you were making, Mara, about the number of cases that you're seeing people reporting, you said there's poor service at police station level. Police officers are still continuing to defend themselves, saying, well, they often send people back to resolve the issue among themselves, or an officer tries to mediate because come the 26th or the 27th or the 2nd of January, when the alcohol has worn off, the couples themselves or whoever is in the dynamic in the violent situation opts to drop the charges. Is that also a major concern for you?
Well, I think the difficulty is that I do not believe, and I see that the Minister of Police has spoken out against it, for policemen advising people to go home. So I think if we had enough safe places that we could send the woman to for that period, and if they were wishing to reconcile, insist that they go for counselling. So the difficulty is that when women drop the charges, by quite a large percentage, one will find it's because the women are undereducated. They don't have the confidence to start a new life. They are the primary caregiver of the children, and the man is the primary breadwinner. So the woman might feel fear for her life in the instance and speak out, but the moment, and so the sobering up of the facts, which is not necessarily alcohol related, suddenly she realizes, I don't have the wherewithal to cope with my life, with my children, if I have a job, keep my job if I leave him. So women become hostages into their relationships because of finance.
Which also speaks to another angle, economic abuse.
Yes, it's a huge factor. And you even have cases of men raping minors or children or whatever, and then the families and then offering to pay the families money for a sort of a blood money, lobola situation to make good the damage. How could you ever make good rape with money? So money has become a thing that is used, and that we unfortunately as a society are accepting rather than standing against it. And it's very difficult, but more is the fact that women are not supported enough. You know, if you go to a shelter and say that woman left her abusive husband and went to shelter, well, within 3 months she's going to be kicked out, because the government only pays for 3 months. So where do you go? You're uneducated, you can't earn, can't look after your children. You're going to go back. So we need to change our whole system and acknowledge that woman abuse is a societal problem. It's not the woman's problem, and even often not the man's problem. It is a societal problem. We need to build a society that supports women.
Can it be a top-down process, Mara? I'm wondering, a process to be led by government versus communities?
Well, I must tell you that I have found government to be exceptionally disappointing. We just cannot have another bloody Bosberaad or another command center or another this or that. We need to be out there helping these women. So the money that was promised for gender-based violence in Parliament almost a year ago has not yet been paid. In fact, many NGOs have shut their doors this year because they got no funding, and they can't get funding. So I think no top-down is going to help. Money is going to help, and we as a country need to speak out, encourage businesses to help us, and insist that government pays the dues that are needed to support women.
Mara Glennie, good to speak to you, founder of the Tears Foundation, speaking to us about gender-based violence during the festive season period. Thank you for your time, Mara.